One of the most common operations of almost any program is making decisions. Your program will often need to compare different values and execute code based upon some logical outcome. And that's where conditional logic comes into play. So in the code editor, I'm going to open up conditionals_start. And in Python, conditionals are handled using the if statement. And so you can see here in the main function, I've got two variables, x and y, and they are 10 and 100 to start with. So let's go ahead and add our first conditional statement. I'm going to write if x is less than y, and then I'm going to assign the result variable to the string x is less than y. And then I'll just print out the result. All right, so the code compares x to y, and if x is less than y, then you can see we set the value of this result variable, and then we print it. So let's run it, and we'll run this in my terminal. And you can see, sure enough, x is less than y. All right, so it seems to work just fine. Now, let's go ahead and close this terminal, and let's see what happens if I change the value of x to be something like 1,000. So I'll run this again. Right. And now I'm getting an error. It says local variable result reference before assignment. And the reason I get that error is because since x is no longer less than y, this code is no longer executed. So my print is trying to print the value of a variable that was never declared. So we have to figure out a way to add in the case where the test condition is false. So let's close the terminal and make that change. So I'll write else result is equal to x is greater than y. All right, so now I've got both conditions handled. So I have the if condition, which will test this condition, and then else will run in all the cases where this evaluates to false. All right, so let's run this one more time. And sure enough, now we're getting x is greater than y. Okay, so now let's try one more thing. Let's make them the same value. So I'll save and I'll run. And, well, I'm getting x is greater than y, but that's not really true, right? They're the same value. And the problem is that this condition here evaluates to false. So we're kind of just assuming that x is greater than y because it's not less than y. So that's not really correct. We have to check to make sure that x actually is greater than y. So we'll make one more change to fix this particular problem. I'm going to write elif x and then 2 equals and then y. Set the string to be x is the same as y. All right, so now we have if, we have elif, and we have else. So this gives us a way of chaining more than one condition together. And you can have as many elif statements as you want, right? So now we're checking for the special case where x and y are the same. So if we run this, and sure enough, we get the right result, x is the same as y. All right, so there's another way of writing conditional statements. Sometimes you'll run into situations where you have just an if and just an else, and so you have like 4 or whatever lines of code intended to do just a simple comparison. Python has a construct called a conditional statement, and the conditional statement lets you write a common if-else construct all in one line. It's a more concise way of writing the comparison logic. So let me just write the statement and you'll see what I mean. So right here, I'm going to write result equals x is less than y, and then I'll write if x is less than y. So I'll put the condition test right here, and then I'll write else x is greater or equal to y. Right. So this code does the work of an if-else construct, but just using one line, and then we'll print the result again. All right, so let's comment out the previous example using Control/, Command/ from the Mac. All right, so we'll save. Okay, and let's go ahead and run this. And we can see that x is greater or equal to y because they're the same. And if I go ahead and change this back to 10, and let me close that terminal and run it again. And now we're seeing, yes, x is less than y. Okay. So it's a nice, concise way of writing a conditional statement instead of having this more verbose if-else block. So there's one more conditional structure that we should look at before we move on, and it's one of the features of Python that's newest. It was added back in the 3.10 release, which should be available by the time you watch this course. So if you want to try the code out that I'm about to show you, you've got to have Python 3.10 installed, and you can see down here I've got 3.10 installed on my machine. So I'm going to write the code that uses the new match case statement. So when you have a lot of different values to test against, it can get pretty tedious to have to write all these multiple else if statement, right? You have an if, and an elif, and an elif, and an elif, and then all these different conditions and so on. Python 3.10 adds the new match case statement, which is a feature that's been available in other languages for quite some time. So down here, I have a value variable, and it's set to the string of 1. Now, if I wanted to compare this variable to multiple different values, I can use the match statement. So I'm going to write match and then value. And then what I'm going to do is list each possible case that the variable might match against. So I'll write case and then 1. And in that case, I'll set the result to 1. And then I'll write case 2 and set the result equal to 2. I can also write a case statement that handles multiple possible values. So for example, I can write case 3 and then a vertical bar, which means the OR operator, and then the string 4. So now I've got a case that handles 3 and 4, in which case I'll set the result equal to a tuple of 3 and 4 together. And I can add a case to handle any condition that I haven't explicitly specified. So you can think of this as a default case handler. So I'll write case underscore and then colon. And in this case, I'll write result is equal to -1. So this case will be handled in case any of the other ones do not get executed. So you can see that this is a lot more pleasant to read than a large number of if, elif, else statements. So let me go ahead and comment out the previous example. And let's make sure we print results down here so we can see what's happening. All right, so let's save and then let's run this. All right, you can see that the result is 1. All right, so let's go ahead and change this to something else. Let's change it to the value of 3. All right, and then let's run this again. All right, now I see we gained a tuple. Okay, now let's change it to something else. Let's change it to 42. And we'll run it. And sure enough, we're getting the -1 result because the default case handler is being executed. So again, this match case feature requires at least Python 3.10. So if you want to try this out, make sure you have that version installed and give it a try on your own machine.